This is Yogg Saron, and because of its super powerful ability that was released during Whispers of the Old Gods, it quickly became one of the most iconic cards in Hearthstone. Not only was it reimagined in a different expansion, Madness at the Darkmoon Faire, it also became a permanent hero in Hearthstone Battlegrounds. But for those of you who don't know, this is what Yogg Saron does. The idea of Yogg Saron was simple. The card was supposed to be just a wacky random card where you have no idea what the outcome would be. Sometimes it would win you the game, other times it would put you in a worse situation. Playing Yogg Saron is inherently a risky move. There are so many things that decide the outcome of how well Yogg Saron will do for you. Not only does the RNG of Yogg Saron play a huge role on how well Yogg will do for you, but the board state matters, so there is a little bit of strategy when it comes to when to play Yogg Saron. Obviously, with more spells being casted beforehand, Yogg Saron's effect is even bigger and potentially better for the player who's playing him. And because of the varied outcomes of Yogg Saron and using things like Brand Bronzebeard to double his battle cry, Yogg Saron was clearly a fan favorite and has been since its release. But the design of the card is very interesting. It's almost like it was made to not be competitive whatsoever, but for a casual Hearthstone player that just wanted to have some fun with randomness. And compared to the design of the other old gods, this effect wasn't supposed to be consistent. It was clearly supposed to be a random card. Look at the design of the original N'Zoth. The whole intent on the design is that you build a deck around it to have a consistent late game effect that will probably win you a game. You can almost think of it as N'Zoth was the polar opposite of what Yogg Saron was supposed to be. But that's what makes Yogg Saron a broken card. When Yogg Saron was first revealed, PC Gamer did an article on it calling it the craziest RNG card to be revealed in Hearthstone so far. And when you think of the craziest RNG card, you don't think of a competitively balanced card, you just think of a fun, wacky card that you'll see play and go, wow, that was ridiculous. But that's what makes Yogg Saron a broken card, because this card ended up being competitively viable. After Whispers of the Old Gods came out, we saw DreamHack Summer take place in Sweden. And at DreamHack Summer, we saw a lot of Yogg Saron, which raised the question in the competitive Hearthstone scene: is Yogg Saron good for a competitive Hearthstone game? Now, I don't know about you, but when I see Yogg Saron being played in a competitive Hearthstone game for a lot of money, it makes competitive Hearthstone look like an absolute joke. When it came to DreamHack Sweden, surprisingly, Yogg Saron saw a lot of play. And I say surprisingly because when people first saw this card, it was written off as a strict meme card that would see no competitive play whatsoever. And because how influential Yogg Saron was in every single game that it was played in, it did a lot of very stupid things in front of a lot of people, kind of showcasing how ridiculous competitive Hearthstone looked at this time. And inevitably, when Yogg Saron did something incredibly stupid in a competitive game of Hearthstone, well, it kind of felt really bad for one of the players that they lost the game or won a game out of nowhere. And one of the best examples is with RDU, who actually ended up winning the tournament for DreamHack Summer when he played Yogg Saron. Now, when I do put on this clip, I want you to focus on the casters. The things the casters say really represents what Yogg Saron was doing in a competitive format.
Looks like this might be Yogg time.
Oh, they actually
gonna
get an
play
attack.
first.
Bloodlust or Savage Roar? First ulti, 3 Water Elementals, what?
Blessing of Might, okay,
Oh,
on the 7/6.
Oh, well, that is actually not impactful.
It's good information though.
Holy moly, what is happening?
Yogg Saron is happening. that's what's happening right now.
This is ridiculous when you think about it.
I just want to know how these things get to attack.
Savage Roar has to be.
I mean, it could be a lot of things. It could be everything is awesome. It could be Bloodlust.
Oh,
it could be
okay.
Wisps of the Old Gods.
Oh my god, what the...
People expect Yogg Saron to be bad.
Now, why was Yogg Saron so strong? Well, it turned out that this was basically a get out of jail free card. The further behind you were, the better Yogg Saron ended up being, and that's just because of the spells in the game at the time. Some of them were extremely risky, but the majority of them were actually really good if you were behind in a Hearthstone game. And because Yogg Saron had virtually no downsides other than paying 10 mana and just giving the game over to RNG, if you were in a very bad spot, it is better to give yourself over to RNG RNG, where you may have a 20% chance of winning compared to a 5% chance winning if you didn't rely on RNG. The other huge part of Yogg Saron is that even if Yogg Saron died from one of the spells it was casting, it would continuously cast spells like it was still alive. This meant if Yogg Saron did end up dying, it doesn't matter. It would still cast as many spells you've cast that game. And the other huge upside of this, if Yogg Saron casted a spell with overload, which is supposed to have the downside to the player, it did not give the player overload. It just cast the spell as Yogg Saron casted it, which means these spells got a lot better. So the question has to be asked, is that level of RNG good for Hearthstone? And yeah, of course it's good for Hearthstone. It's one of the most iconic cards and it's clearly made a lot of people happy. But is it good for competitive Hearthstone? The article by Esports raised the question about Yogg Saron. What does this card do for the reputation of Hearthstone? It reinforces the belief that Hearthstone is a skill-light, luck-heavy game where players who win don't really do anything better than anyone else. Ask yourself this: if a world champion won a game because of Yogg Saron, do they really deserve the title of world championship? And this could be debated one way or another, but it definitely takes some of the credibility away from the player who's playing at the highest level. A lot of competitive Hearthstone players at the time definitely wanted Yogg Saron to be changed. But in the year 2016, Blizzard still had their old design philosophy of only nerfing a card unless they felt like it was absolutely necessary. So Yogg Saron still wasn't nerfed going into the America's Summer Championship. And like you could probably imagine, Yogg Saron was played a ton.
Well, there is one way to deal with it. Yogg Saron comes down, and his goal is just one thing, well, two things really. Clear the board and try to draw as many cards as possible.
Lightning Storm is big.
Lightning Storm's guaranteed to kill him. The ward in. Little bit off. Oh man, that's always iffy. Drawing cards, though, is pretty powerful. Farsight could also be really nasty if he gets Malygos. Oh, man. More card draw. That's 6 cards being drawn this turn.
Yeah, that was a pretty powerful Yogg Saron from Hot Meowth here. This is a lot of damage from Hot Meowth here. Not quite lethal. He is setting Monsanto down just 6. What's going to happen?
Are they grinning or are they grimacing? We'll find out in just a few seconds here. Monsanto is looking for one thing, and that one thing only, and that's board clear. It doesn't even matter about drawing cards because he's got a lot of resources. Arcane Nature could taunt a big minion. Not that one.
These are not quite cutting it here. That could have been on his own face and killed him.
Yeah. And no, that's it.
Not to take away anything from the winner of that tournament, who ended up being Hot Meowth, but it is very funny that in the winning lineup of this specific tournament, Yogg Saron was there. Clearly having Yogg Saron do so well, it made Blizzard think about this card. And not even a month after this championship, Yogg Saron was changed. On October 3rd, 2016, Yogg Saron was changed to stop casting spells if it was destroyed, silenced, transformed, or returned to hand. Now, this was obviously a ginormous change because it heavily reduced the power level of Yogg Saron. It was nowhere near as consistent as it used to be, but the more interesting part about this nerf was the dev comment. This is the most controversial card we've ever made. Some people love Yogg and others hate it. We felt like seeing Yogg in tournaments was not where we originally hoped it would end up. Yogg should be for players who want to have a lot of fun, but maybe not the card you see frequently in high-level tournaments. And that right there is how Blizzard fixed Yogg Saron, making it still a very fun card, but not nearly as competitively viable. 17 days after this nerf, they also changed it so if Yogg Saron casted an overloaded spell, it would actually give the player the overloaded mana crystals. They did end up reverting all these changes on March 17th, 2020. Yogg Saron is where it was when it was first released, so if you want to go try out the card, you're more than welcome to. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you ended up enjoying it, I would really appreciate a subscription. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.